Okay, Marc Gafni, we're live. We're talking about hate sites on the web. Do you have any opinions on hate sites on the web?
Well, I think the opinion that I hope we both share is that we're opposed to hate sites on the web. Whether that's we're opposed to hatred. Right? I think let's start there. I think hatred is or malice, in its other form is obviously an age-old phenomenon in the world. What we're talking about particularly, though, is the kind of collusion between what we might call the dark side of the web, and hatred. So, for example, if 25 years ago, a skinhead or neo-Nazi in America, couldn't, talk to 500,000 people or even 3,000 people, today. Right, again, the web has many gorgeous and evolved expressions and many things that are enormously important, which is a different dialogue. But in this particular thing we're talking about, that neo-Nazi or that sexual McCarthyist or that McCarthyist, that person who's kind of can really use the web to express their ideas, number one, but more than to express their ideas, but actually to do damage, to attack, to libel, in ways that are almost impossible, to respond to. I'm just give you an example. Let's say that a person is attacked on the web. Let's say Obama. So whatever our opinion about this particular election is, we'll leave out of this discussion. I think we actually might agree on it. But in any case, let's take Senator Obama. So whether one favors or opposes him, many things have been said about him, by not by the responsible Republican Party, but by kind of fringes of the Republican Party, just like there's fringes of the Democratic Party, which are highly irresponsible and highly wrong, and which are clear, vicious, smears. So the Obama campaign had to make a decision. Well, do you respond or do you not respond? So, someone who was involved with the campaign said to me, they sat down and had the normal discussion. Well, why don't we just, hire a lawyer and sue the people, that are saying these false things? And of course, the response was, anyone who's looked up the law knows, you can almost never do that for a simple reason. That if you're a private person, right, and you sue someone, in order to kind of win the suit, you need merely to prove that the person told an untruth, the person lied. If you're a public person, the law changes because we want to protect free speech in America, and you have to prove not only that the person lied, but you have to prove malice. Malice means the person intentionally lied. So all the person has to do in order to, evade being prosecuted is said, I heard rumors. So I heard rumors. I thought they were true. Which is, of course, the mask of malice. So it's actually very, very difficult for any public person, to avoid that kind of, vicious slander. And people say, well, if it wasn't true, why wouldn't you just sue them? Well, the answer is it's very difficult. And so what that does is, and Dennis Prager's made this point, a number of times, so I want to say it, in his name, because, anyone who says something in the name of the person who said it brings redemption to the world, as the Talmud says. What that does is, it prevents some of our best people from entering public service, right? In other words, Dennis has pointed out, almost anyone who's a complex and interesting person has something in their life that can be distorted, right? And so, if we want, people who are complex, right, but who are actually, powerful, good leaders in the best sense of the word, with strong moral passion, strong moral courage, we have to have some sort of protection, of public figures, whether that's in the realm of spirit or the realm of public service or politics. So in that sense, not only are hate sites on the web, a classical expression of hate, but they actually potentially, do an enormous amount of damage. And one of the most important responses is really to begin to educate the public to be discerning readers. The notion that because I read something it's true, but it's of course an absurd notion. But we kind of have that kind of strange belief in the written word. So that's at least something to open our conversation. And what do you say, Mr. Ford, about hate sites on the web?
Okay, I have a lot to say.
Well, take the beginning. Somehow I thought you did.
Yeah, stop me if I go on too long.
Okay, no, please.
First of all, I don't have a problem with any emotion being the tenor of a particular website. So if a site is primarily characterized by the emotion of hatred, that no more bothers me than if a website is primarily characterized by the emotion of love. To me, it's or determined by how the hatred is expressed and by whom and against whom. So I am not opposed to hate sites any more than I'm opposed to love sites.
I can't let go. It's just asking a question, right? So in other words, to you, it doesn't really matter whether it's Rabbi Soloveitchik's Torah or a neo-Nazi site. I mean, I
said what matters to me is not the emotional tenor of a site, whether it's hatred or love, but who is hating and on who is being hated and how is it done. So that a piece of writing or a piece of art or an internet website has an emotion that primarily connotes hate. I need to know that doesn't bother me in and of itself. I need to know who is doing the hating, who is being hated on, and how is the hatred being expressed.
Right. So let me ask the question differently. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. In other words, and this is precisely where we run into, Levi, I think the problem of McCarthyism. There's a question mark here, which will come in about 30 seconds. Watch your watch. Right. Which is, what McCarthyism did. In other words, we clearly agree that blind hatred, right, is a bad thing. Right, to major an understatement. What you're saying is, well, hatred per se, it's an important point you're making, right, which the psalmist makes, right, that hatred sometimes has a place, right, so hatred per se we're not going to invalidate from the school of emotions, agreed. However, right, what McCarthyism does is, hiding behind an ostensibly good cause, for example, the fear of communism, which was a legitimate fear, communism being, the greatest evil perhaps in history, right? And, why don't good people hate communism is a fair question, right? So in other words, hating something that does great evil is a legitimate, response, again, the response of the psalmist. And however, to use that, right, to use that fear in order to do, causeless hatred, what the Talmud calls causeless hatred, what the Talmud calls is, frivolous hatred, playing into that fear in order to accomplish, petty, political, nefarious, vicious ends, violates everything that, Judaic ethics are based on. So I agree. I think your distinction is an important one. We're not dismissing hatred per se, right? However, right, the utilization of a good cause, right, what your colleague Prager called idolatry, right? You take a good cause, you take it out of context, and you use it in order to do the most vicious things, right? That's actually what a hate site does. Right, a hate site, whether it's a McCarthyite site, a sexual McCarthyite site, right, or a neo-Nazi site, and paradoxically, those sites are often linked to each other, right? We know that, there's a number of sexual McCarthyite sites that I'm aware of that are heavily linked to neo-Nazi sites, right? But it's not by accident. It's karmically not by accident, because ignoring fact, ignoring empirical verifiability, right? And I'll say it from a very personal place, Levi. I think when you were with me in Torrey, I mentioned to you that I had seen a particular hate site, which has, 98% things about me are blatantly untrue. Among them I had seen on that day, Gafni's attracted to prepubescent boys. First I was upset because it's really barnyard animals, you know what I mean? So I couldn't understand why they were talking about prepubescent boys, right? But, jokes aside, that's a vicious, horrible, sick thing to do, right? Which has no empirical basis, obviously, right? And to even say so is kind of, is kind of loathing. And so that's what I call a hate site. A hate site ignores empirical reality, taps into, right, a good cause, fear of communism, fear of sexual abuse, right, etc., and then distorts it, in a very, very horrendous way. So I accept your distinction in terms of hate, but we'll just kind of add on that qualification to respond.
Have you ever seen or heard of the website, the Awareness Center?
The Awareness Center. Yes, I have, as a matter of fact. I actually have.
From everything that you know of that website, would you call it a hate website?
The parts of it that I know of the website, I absolutely would. Right? Because I'm not familiar with the entire thing. I know where I'm attacked on that site. So obviously I've heard of the site. I know where Harold Bloom is attacked on the site. I know where the chief rabbi